Hello world, it's Mark Wilkinson here. It's another wonderful Tuesday evening here in the UK. It's the book club. We do book club every single Tuesday. Tonight we're going to be talking about chapter 8, which is a new kind of medicine. Of course, there's a Chelsea match on. Whoever scheduled this needs to have a good word with themselves. But at the end of the day, we're going to have a great conversation tonight. You're going to get loads of great information from it. And then, of course, I'll be off to support my team. So it's all good. It's all wonderful. I'll give you a little intro. So for most of my 20s, I lived completely out of control. I didn't pay attention to what I was feeding my body. And as a result, I suffered greatly. And I don't want you to do that, right? I don't want you to suffer the way I suffered. Most of it, in fact, all of it is in Life Remixed. I had several operations, several treatments, but I learned that I learned to be careful, I should say, with my thoughts, feelings and actions. And that was a big one for me because my thoughts, feelings and actions were way off course for quite some considerable time. But my body gave me a bit of a body blow and put me on the floor. And that's when I had to start listening and learning and understanding what was really going on. But it included the surroundings I was in, the diet I was eating and the stress that I was under. And the diet is what we're going to talk about tonight, particularly. But the stress and everything else comes into it as well, of course, as well. So, I mean, being healthy and fit now at 50 years old is honestly, it's a bit of a miracle, to be honest. I find it quite miraculous that I wake up pain-free every morning. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I'm going to share a few things that I've learned, but I'm also going to bring in a guy now who has been instrumental in changing the course of my life. Now, I've done various detoxes. I've done lots of things. And I was fortunate enough then to be connected with a guy called Dave Hompes. And Dave is a nutritional coach, amongst so many other things. He's almost a scientist, I think, to be honest. But I'm going to bring him in now. You can meet him, and then I'm going to let him introduce himself, of course, as well. So, hi, Dave. How are you?
Good, Mark. How are you? Thanks
yeah, really good. Yeah, well, you're almost a scientist.
I do read a lot of science, but I'm also an artist. So I'll try and put them together into some kind of quasi-science arty person.
So, I mean, I've really enjoyed working with you. If you remember, we met and we were introduced, and I actually ended up working with you, signing up with you and working with you after I just left my last corporate job and my knees were hugely inflamed. That was the moment. And we've worked together pretty much now for the last 3 years or so. But before we get into that, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about you, where you've studied, what you've learned, and how you're here today?
Yeah, I'll do a very fast track version of that because I'm sure bits of it will probably weave in. I should take my time. So just so that you can't go and watch Chelsea. So obviously the more important game is tomorrow at Burnley.
Oh yeah, clearly, mate. Carry on. Get him over.
So I studied, I've always been active. I was into sport. My parents got me into sport from a young age, and I played a lot of football, loads of cricket, and got to reasonably high levels, and then couldn't manage both of those with academic stuff at the same time. And so I focused on the academics and just played more recreational, played with my mates, beer afterwards and all of those things. Studied sports science at Loughborough. That was my degree. I did a joint honours with geography, actually. I thought at the time it might be a good idea to become a PE teacher. And you need two subjects. You need your major subject and then one that you can sub on, I think, back then anyway. It's about 30 years ago nearly now. Crazy. And so thereafter, I did a sports science master's. And that's basically the end of my academic career. I was really lucky at Loughborough because I got to play loads of sport, but that was just about when Loughborough was becoming the hub, if you like, or one of the hubs for the English Institute of Sport. And that meant that I got to hang out with a lot of athletes, pretty high level. And I ended up working for a couple of years under the, I wouldn't call it mentorship, he was more my boss than anything, but Dave Reddin, who was the England Rugby Union fitness coach when they won the World Cup, basically, in 2003. And so I got to work under him and I got to work with England Rugby and learn a lot about, professional sport at the very highest level, which was seriously cool. I was also a gym instructor at that time. So my professional career started with teaching people how to exercise well, exercise safely, and all of that stuff, build muscle, lose weight, yada, yada. Then I went traveling. So broadened my horizons, opened my eyes to, the world around us rather than just the UK, changing my attitudes. I spent a year in Australia, but before then I went to Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore. I was in New Zealand for a while, the States, Cook Islands, great time. And came back, and there was an embarrassing episode when I was in Australia, actually. Well, there were a lot of embarrassing episodes, but there's the one professional embarrassing episode was this sort of chip on my shoulder that I had because I'd studied for a long time at supposedly the UK's #1 sports university, and sort of felt that I had everything I needed to waltz into any sort of job around, in that area, just because of my academics and my experience. And I got a rude awakening in Sydney when I went to a job interview for just simple gym instruction, really, because I had the 12-month working visa. Yeah. And I walked in, sat down and had the interview, and walked out as if somebody had just slapped me 100 times in the face, or my ego, should we say. The ego took a pummeling because they just asked me a load of questions and I didn't know how to answer them. And I'm sat there with these thoughts going through my head. How can I not answer this question after doing 5 years at Loughborough and all the stuff that I've been doing? And so I vowed to myself when I got back to the UK that I would go and figure out what it was that I needed to know that I didn't know. And I was properly humbled. I walked out of there shaking, almost crying, thinking, fuck, I know nothing. After thinking I knew everything, I know absolutely nothing. So I got back and I found a guy in California by the name of Paul Chek, Chek. And this guy was a very practical guy rather than an academic guy. And I did a couple of courses with him online, correspondence courses where they sent everything to you rather than having it streaming online, because it was back in 2002, this. And I just started learning stuff that was obvious, but that I hadn't learned at university. Yeah. And it was all about how I could actually help people in the real world rather than what blood test markers I should be looking for after doing a 30-second sprint on an exercise bike, hooked up to God knows how many gizmos, to test my blood and sweat and all of that stuff. So I started to then want to learn more about how to operate in the real world rather than being institutionalized in higher education, which is where I'd been. I'd lived a powder puff, fully supported life where everything was done for me. And when I got out into the real world, it was a real slap in the face, as I said. So cut a long story short, I did a lot of study with him, and I became a corrective exercise specialist come personal trainer. Corrective exercise is basically when people have tweaks and recurring injuries and back pain and neck pain and things like that. Why is that happening? So I became a sort of diagnostic, a doctor in that area. So working with chiropractors and osteopaths and physios, why does this person have backache? Fixing that through stretching, exercise, etc. And sort of nutrition came naturally into that, because nutrition can resolve or calm down inflammation, or it can cause inflammation. And inflammation is the root cause of disease and pain. Pretty much all of the diseases that people end up with these days are caused by inflammation. You die from COVID because of inflammation. It's not the virus. It's the inflammatory response to COVID that causes the tissue damage that leads to death, right? So inflammation's at the heart of everything, and you and I are going to get into that as we go along. But I would start to find that certain people's backache would go away when they started avoiding certain foods. And they might have spent thousands on other treatments thinking that it was a mechanical structural issue in their spine. Yeah. And what it was a reflex from the gut to the spine because the gut was inflamed. And started to find all sorts of these connections and learn more about them from various mentors and things like that. But during this time, I set up a business doing this in Newcastle, because that's where I was living at the time, having worked at Northumbria University. So that's the worst place in the world to set up a business teaching people how to be healthy. It was in 2002. So my business partner, a guy named Simon Hartley, he'd just jumped ship from Sunderland Football Club where I was working. And with his expertise and mine together, we were like, we can't fail. And we made the worst decision we could have possibly made by setting our business up in the wrong place. And we ended up spending loads of money and both ended up with a little bit of financial strife because people didn't want to pay what we wanted to charge up there in that small northeastern corner. Now, I'm not knocking Newcastle, by the way, because I had a great time there. It's an amazing place and the people are absolutely spot on. It just wasn't the right place for that particular business.
Didn't do market research, Dave?
No, well, we didn't. I was completely naive in business. There was no business acumen at all. It was literally, well, I know all of this, therefore people will pay me for it. And then, of course, the failure of that business and the financial ramifications of that was yet another big slap in the face. It was probably the second biggest humbling experience I'd had in my life. And I needed it. You know as well as I do that you need to have these humbling experiences, as hard as they are to go through. I moved down to London, tried to salvage the finances. London's not the best place to try and salvage finances because you earn more, but you spend it all. So I ended up doing a bit of a Mark Wilkinson at that point in those sort of 2003 to 2007 years. I ended up visiting numerous nightclubs on weekends and putting copious amounts of things into my body that shouldn't really go there. And waking up feeling so guilty on the Monday, going, I'm trying to teach people how to be healthy here. And I'm not following my own rules at all. In fact, not only am I not following my own rules, I'm making my own rules up that I'd never teach anybody to do. So I went through that. I needed to go through that phase as well. I still worked with people and tried to help them as best I could. But it was very hypocritical and there was a lot of emotional and internal conflict, which caused a lot of stress. I then ended up with a load of symptoms myself. So here I am, supposedly this fit, healthy personal trainer. I probably looked okay from the outside, a bit of a six pack and decent arms and pecs and things. And so you would not have thought that there was anything abnormal going on, but I was feeling terrible. So there was I distinctly remember 2 or 3 occasions where I'd go in to do my early morning training session before work with somebody. And that'd start at 7 o'clock. And I'd travel into Marylebone and do that. Seymour Leisure Centre is where I did most of my training on Seymour Place there. And I literally 2 or 3 times, I could feel myself going grey, feel the chunder welling up inside me. And I'd have to run down to the toilet and vomit. And I'm like, what on earth is going on? And even with all of the learning that I'd done up to that point, I didn't know why I felt so bad. So I had loads of digestive problems. I had heartburn, bloating, bowel movements that you wouldn't wish on anybody, or certainly nobody you live with. Smelly, foul, just horrible. And I felt down and depressed and anxious on a roller coaster and irritable. Moods were all over the place. I had dandruff. I couldn't sleep very well. I was just waking up all the time. I certainly made a rod for my own back with my lifestyle, but the financial stuff and the imminent bankruptcy all piled up like straws on the camel's back, really. So I ended up in a pretty bad place in 2007. And then my mum died suddenly, aged 60. And that was almost like the straw that broke the camel's back in many regards. So I had a crisis of losing a loved one, probably, arguably the dearest loved one, the one that you'd go, if you had to lose anybody, who would be the one that you didn't want to lose? And so it was mum, and it was pretty sudden as well. And there was a bit of anger there because the medical system it was a fuck up, frankly. It was poor practice by the local doctors. But I managed to pull myself out of that. It was just, you get these things just at the right time. The synchronicities all happen if you're aware of them and you take notice. And all that happened actually just after I'd started to learn functional medicine. And a functional medicine tutor, and we'll talk about what functional medicine is later, he said you need to run a stool test to figure out what's going on. And you need to look at some hormones. Look at your hormones as well. So I was like, okay, let's do that. So I spat in some tubes at home with a little test kit. You know the drill. Little test kit to your home. You pee, you spit, you poo. You can send that all back off to the lab. You don't need a doctor's note. You don't need a prescription. This is all handled by the private labs now, which are arguably more advanced with what they do than a lot of the medical stuff. And so I found H. pylori, which is a bacterium that lives in your stomach. And it causes stomach cancer if you leave it there in some people over many, many years. And it's the number one cause of ulcers, stomach ulcers, which can also kill you if you're not careful. So it's a nasty little critter. So I zapped that with some herbs. But the herbs that my mentor recommended me actually made me feel worse. So I had to find my own way. That was a massive blessing. Because as I was searching for on the internet, I found this company that did a little tea that you drink, which I think you drunk, Matula Herbal Formula.
Yep.
I ordered it. It came. I drank one cup. I drank another cup, one in the morning, one at night. Woke up the next day, and most of the digestive symptoms had gone. It's like, that is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so I was then sort of surfing the internet, I was like, I don't know, off with the fairies. And I suddenly had a voice. You don't know what the voice is, whether it's spirit or whether it's, whatever your conception of God is, whether it's your soul talking to you. It just said, set up a project on H. pylori. And so I thought, that's a good idea. So I started really purposefully looking through the internet on H. pylori. There was nothing there at the time in 2007. Nobody had created a resource to help people with H. pylori. So I did that, and business really took off because it was helping somebody with a specific problem. In the meantime, I rebalanced my hormones. I got rid of some of the other stuff that I found in my gut that shouldn't be there. There was some mold overgrowth, which sounds ridiculous. Literally the type of mold that you'll see growing on cheese and bread. If you leave it, that can overgrow in your digestive system as well. It's not acknowledged by the medical system whatsoever. All of the foul smelling, horrible stools went away after I got rid of all of that. And I was back to normal. Doing all of that, got rid of the mood problems, got the energy back up, sleeping okay, dandruff cleared up, digestive symptoms went away. No doctor visited in sight, apart from my mentor, who was over in California at the time. So that was really inspiring. And I just wanted to figure out how to help. I just wanted to figure out how I could help other people do what I did, achieve what I did. Same thing as what you're doing now, ostensibly. So I ran that H. pylori project for ages, and it's still there. But over time, people came along that were more complex and more difficult to help. They weren't responding to the standard stuff that worked for the first 1 or 2 years of me doing that work. You know the drill. The universe just sends you stuff to stop you getting cocky and comfortable and humbles you as usual. And so it got to 2012, and I had I'm hoping to share 3 or 4 of my favorite case studies to give people an idea of what's possible, apart from just you and I and our stories. I had a lady working with a lady in her 50s in Edinburgh, and we were Skyping and doing phone consults. And I did all the functional medicine stuff with her. Checked her nutrient levels, checked her digestion, tried to figure out what was in her body that shouldn't be there, get rid of that, trying to figure out, what dietary changes were needed, trying to figure out how to balance her hormones and all of this. And she'd improved about 20% after 3 or 4 months. And that was great for her. She was really pleased about that. She had a lot of anxiety, really anxious. She was tired all the time. She had digestive problems, a whole bunch of different symptoms that so many people walk around with, somehow maybe thinking this must be normal because my friend also feels this way, or my sister feels this way, or, my work colleagues are always moaning. So it seems normal to not feel well. You don't have a diagnosable disease. You don't have cancer. You don't have necessarily heart disease or rheumatoid arthritis or asthma or anything along those lines, but you just don't feel right. It's like there's a vitality scale, and 10 is optimal health and vitality, 0 is death. And we all fluctuate a little bit, but we want to be fluctuating as tightly as possible, as close to the top as possible. Most of my clients are down at a 5 or a 6, and they just feel crap. But when they go to the doctor just says, well, we've done a blood test, there's nothing wrong with you. Or we've done an ultrasound and we can't find anything. And you go, but I don't feel well. Well, you don't have a problem. There's nothing I can label you with to give you a drug to treat this. So, fuck off, basically. I've got a practice full of patients that I need to see, and you're bothering me now. Now, of course, not all doctors are like that, but that's how it feels to people who are in this position. They're not being listened to, they're not being understood, and they feel isolated. And so they go on the internet, and now the internet's just an expanse of different opinions that's just confusing. Should I be vegan? Should I be plant-based? Should I be ketogenic? Should I be paleo? Should I be a carnivore? You know, that's just mind boggling. So they go, oh, screw this, there's nothing I can do about it. And they lose hope and they get frustrated. And that's sad. And there's a lot of people in that. Most of our clients are in that boat when they come and talk to us first. So anyway, she was in that boat. And I was frustrated that we hadn't made more progress during that time. And so there's another test that you and I have done together. It's called the organic acids test. You pee in the beaker first thing in the morning, and then you freeze it and send it off to the lab. And it looks at like 90 different things I can tell about what's going on in your body just from looking in your urine at these things. What's going on in your gut, what's going on with your detoxification, your liver, your inflammation, your brain chemistry, all of these different things. So nearly every marker on that test for her was too high or too low. And I sat there just going, I can't recommend a supplement, a nutrient for each of these. Otherwise, she's going to walk down the street and rattle with all the pills in her belly. It's like, there's no way. That's just not possible. And just at the time, again, another synchronicity. You tell your story involves a lot of Tony Robbins' teachings. Mine was more John DeMartini. They're different characters and they work in different ways, but their goal is the same: to inspire people to live magnificent lives of inspiration and help as many people as possible. John does a lot of mind-body stuff. He's a bit more specific than Tony is with this stuff, but John's mind-body stuff. So I'd recently downloaded a couple of MP3s from his website. One was called Mind Over Body, and one was called The Healing Mind. And I'd listened to them. And again, that little voice said, this client is not going to heal from doing just this work. You're going to have to do something else. So like, she was there at the right time, and his MP3s were there just at the right time. Put the two together and you go, there's something going. So the next consultation with her, I had a bit of an out of body experience. It was a bit weird, this one. I said, we're not going to talk about the test results today. I don't know much about your life. By the way, I'm not qualified to do any of this at the time. I was fucking clueless. I just knew that I had to connect with her in a different way than just telling her what to eat and what supplements to take. So anyway, we got this conversation going, and she said, I've just been away for the weekend. I didn't have a great weekend. I don't get on with my parents very well. They seem to like my sister more than me. And she's married and she's got and she's got kids, and so they've got grandkids. No worries. Was that Chelsea?
No, carry on, keep going. Sorry, my bad.
But what happened was then, I thought, well, there's something psychological going on here. She's stressed about something with the family. So then I asked her more about her life, and one of the things that triggered this was also I'd struggle to get an appointment with her. She'd say, I'm busy on that day or that night. It's like, for fuck's sake, you can't be busy every day. You're not working. So how can you be so busy every day?
Yeah.
I didn't say, this is just stuff going through my mind. And all this narrative came out about how her diary is full, doing all the things that other people want her to do. And how she'd love some time to herself to do the things that she'd love to do. And the joy that she gets from just getting out by herself and taking the dog for a walk. And that's the happiest she is. So and I'm writing all of this down going, this is all pure gold after I've listened to this DeMartini stuff. So it got to the point where I then asked, you haven't told me about an intimate relationship. Have you got a boyfriend, a partner, girlfriend, whatever? And she just said, haven't had one for 30 years. Since my symptoms all kicked in, because I haven't felt like anybody would want to be with me. I've not felt worthy. Wow. And I'm starting to well up. I start to well up at this point when I'm telling the story. And so I'm going, this is what's causing the symptoms. This is what we need to work on. And so, and then she said, I've always felt left out, she said. When I was growing up as a kid, all the kids were my sister's age. And so I always felt slightly left out. I was older than her, but I always felt left out. There weren't that many friends for me to hang out with in our local area. And then she said, and I don't know if this is of any relevance. When I was born, my mum was ill and I had to be sent into the ICU and spent the first few days of my life away from my mum. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how the hell to deal with this. I was thinking to myself, but I'll give it a go. And I don't know where it came from. I just said, Margaret, do you think that has anything to, to any role to play in the symptoms? You're quiet on the other end of the phone. And she just said, yes, I do. It's like you've just opened a can of worms here, and you're going, I'm going, oh crap, what's going to happen next?
Yeah.
And so I just said, can you see from that moment, your perception as a baby, even though you're not able to think in language, that we know from animal studies, from monkeys, Harry Harlow and what have you, back in the 50s and 60s, they did the notion that the mother is more than just a nipple, right, to get milk from. You need the mother for the connection, for the love. And she didn't get that. And I said, does it seem to you like your whole life's played out as one continuation of those first few days of your life? Yeah, big long silence on the phone. Yeah. I said, when was the last time somebody said to you they loved you? Like, fuck knows where that came from, but that's what I said. And she said, I can't remember the last time somebody said that. And I said, well, I love you, Margaret. And I was crying by then. And then she burst into tears. So we both had this weird, tearful experience thing. So anyway, all we did for the next month was reorganize her life. I got her out of believing that she needed to live her life to please other people, to do all the things that she wanted to do instead, that they'd understand, not to worry if she got really honest with them and said, I don't want to see you every week now for coffee. I want to do it every 2 weeks because I want to spend the other week, the week in between, doing other stuff. So we gradually rearranged everything. And she ended up going on holiday on her own to Mallorca, which was a lifetime dream that she was too scared to do. She traveled around Scotland looking at all the stately homes and castles because she was fascinated by history. And she went for a cruise in the Norwegian fjords, and all the symptoms went.
Yeah, and it's very similar. Yeah, it's very similar to stress, isn't it?
Yeah, and so that was a massive thing for me. It was like, oh shit, I'm onto something else here. I've heard of people talking about stress and mind body before, all the way back to Paul Chek in 2002, but it took me 10 years to grasp here what that actually means. Now, the other cool thing about that was her hormone test the first time round was the worst I've ever seen in terms of low hormone levels. I was like, how can somebody have these low hormones and still be alive? How can you even get out of bed with these low hormones, the cortisol and things like that? After that first 3 months using nutrition and things, we'd made an inroad to them, but they were still way too low. They completely normalized. I thought to myself, I want to retest them. They completely normalized when we changed their mind. It was remarkable. So that really got me into thinking, I definitely don't know everything. There's a universe of stuff to explore here. And I know I need to understand this to know where to go if people don't respond particularly well to the nutrition and the functional medicine, which some people don't, because it's actually not what they need. And so around that time, I had another client who she'd been married for 25 years. They'd grown apart. They were living together. She left him and all the symptoms went away. She changed her identity, she changed her name, changed her identity, and she was like a new person. And the old person had the symptoms, not the new person. And so that's metaphysical, but it can be explained. But that was another one. And I'm going, right, this is cool. So roll on. I go, right, this Christmas, I'm looking on the internet, booking all the DeMartini courses, because that was the inspiration to get these results. So I go to South Africa. I start to learn from him, have some weird and wonderful experiences learning with John. Turns my world upside down in terms of many of my perceptions and belief systems and things. I had a bit of an identity crisis at that point, like, oh my God, who am I? What am I doing here? What is this all about? Do I really want to do this stuff that I've been doing, or do I want to move on? And I had a rough year. It was an enjoyable but rough year at the same time, because I was learning all this new stuff, but I was falling apart at the same time. But long story short, at one of the courses, I met Carlos, and Carlos had multiple sclerosis. So this leads us on to talking about your case, really, and inflammation and things. But multiple sclerosis in the medical system is deemed incurable. Like all autoimmune diseases, it's like pretty much all diseases in general. You've got this disease now. We're going to hang this label on you. That makes me happy as a doctor because I know what you have, and that makes, believe it or not, psychologically, it makes a lot of people happy to know that they've had a label hung on them as well. Now they can go and tell all the friends and family that they've got this label and they're not making it up. And there's a deep psychological component to all of that. So he'd been labeled with multiple sclerosis. And it's where your nerves get damaged by your own immune system. Your own immune system attacks the sheaths on your nerves and gradually makes you, first of all, very painful. But then you start to lose mobility and the ability to move your body around. Essentially, you might end up in a wheelchair and stuff. So I'm talking to Carlos, and he said, "I used to have multiple sclerosis." Oh, that sounds interesting. That's not supposed to be curable. Was it gluten sensitivity? Did you have parasites? Was it heavy metal toxicity? What was it? And he's looking at me as if I'm a lunatic because I'm still in my functional medicine model for multiple sclerosis. And he said, "No. I came to breakthrough experience with John, and I walked out with most of my symptoms gone, and then the blood test a couple of weeks later showed that it just wasn't there anymore." And I'm going, this is bonkers. This is even more bonkers than these two ladies that I've been working with. So since that time, what I've been doing is developing a model that incorporates the physical stuff, which is the nutrition, the functional medicine, the toxins, the chronic infections, food allergies, helping people with their immune system, etc. That side of the health equation, and developing a model to help people with the psychology as well. Understanding that the mind affects the body and the body affects the mind. It's bi-directional, and for example, you could have someone with pretty nasty depression. If you fix the gut, the depression can go away. Where no amount of psychological work with a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist will ever work, because it's an inflamed brain that's causing the problem, and that's caused by what's going on elsewhere in the body. But you can then also have somebody who has chronic digestive symptoms or pain that clears up when they work on their psychology. And so it can go in both directions, and you never quite know which is which. And my frustration is that the mind people don't talk to the body people enough, and the body people don't talk to the mind people. And there's a gap between the two, when what we really need to be doing is connecting it together, and not forgetting that we might need an osteo, a chiro, or a physio to crack our back and do that kind of stuff as well.
And that, Dave, is where you and I come into this together, because, by the way, that's an amazing intro. I haven't got a word in for 30 minutes, and but I've loved listening to every minute of it, mate. It's beautiful. What you've told there is a beautiful story. I'm getting some lovely comments. I've got a couple of questions as well coming up. So I want to say hi to Jason, Angela, Megan, Emma, lots and lots of people watching. Someone saying an amazing and lovely story about your story helping people, Dave. So that's beautiful. Which is where we come in together, because working together, I'm very much about the mind. But I've understood my body's a reflection of my mind. And when I've understood that my body's a reflection of my mind, I've worked on my mind, but then I've also gone out to other coaches. And one of the great questions to ask anyone is, who coaches the coach? Now, for you, it was Dr. John DeMartini was kind of like your game changer moment, despite all these other things that kind of got you there. Working with John DeMartini, who's a star of The Secret, of course, as well, was something that really started to, open your mind into that whole connection and the bi-directional thing. And for me, it was Bob Proctor, Tony Robbins, etc., etc. So let me just read these quotes at the start of chapter 8, right? So let food be thy medicine, and that was Hippocrates, right? So that's coming back. That's thousands of years old. Someone did say once Hippocrates, but it's not. It's Hippocrates. Let's stick with that. But let food be thy medicine. Very important, right? And if I think about my younger life, I put so much crap into this body that I'm surprised it managed. Well, it kind of didn't keep going, right? Yeah. I like this one from Robin Sharma. If you don't make time for exercise, you'll probably have to make time for illness. I'd say that's pretty true as well, but getting oxygen and stuff into the body. And the last one on the quotes here is observation is power and judgment is weakness. Now, that's from Bob Proctor. So those are my opening quotes to chapter 8. Now, obviously, inflammation is such a a fascinating thing that, you know, you made an amazing point earlier about the fact that, you know, the COVID virus actually, you know, gets connected to the inflammation, and that's what actually can tip people over the edge. And there is a tipping point with inflammation, isn't there?
Yeah. So inflammation's like it's the root cause, if you like, of all. We could argue semantically that it might not be the root cause, but let's say once the body's inflamed, many different health conditions can develop as a result of that inflammation, depending on where the inflammation is and sort of the precise nature of it. So when you sprain your ankle, you know, you get inflammation. The pain, the redness, the soreness, the swelling, that's basically inflammation. Same when you get a splinter in your finger. Pain, redness, weeping, bleeding, etc. Inflammation.
Yeah.
Now, not all inflammation is acute. You know, it's not just a single event like a sprained ankle or a splinter in the finger. It can develop subtly over a long period of time and end up causing a lot of problems. You may not even be able to feel any of that developing. Yeah. You can't necessarily feel brain inflammation that leads to dementia. You can't feel inflammation in your blood vessels and your arteries that leads to heart disease, but it's inflammation that's at the root of those conditions. Even things like type 2 diabetes, which is deemed to be a excess sugar consumption disease, is really an inflammatory disease. So all of the diseases that end up killing people in older age, sometimes young age, relatively young, diabetes, heart disease, autoimmune conditions, dementia, chronic lung problems, kidney disease, all of these things, they're all basically inflammation or inflammatory disorders that develop over time. And doesn't have to be that way. Yeah. First of all, you don't need to necessarily develop the inflammation in the first place if you live with optimal amounts of exercise, with the right individualized eating plan, figuring out whether you've got things that are creating inflammation in your body and getting rid of them, putting the inflammatory dampening substances back into your body. You know, these are fairly simple things to do. But if you leave it to run its course, it'll end up causing all kinds of problems. So when people are older and dysfunctional, it's nearly always, you know, people can fall and have injuries and things, but chronically, it's nearly always inflammation that's at the heart of it. And the inflammation is there for a reason. It's not your enemy. You need inflammation from time to time. But it's only when it goes out of control and it's left unchecked. Now, why do you get inflamed? Well, it's actually your immune system. You cannot become inflamed without your immune system. The immune system is the cause of any inflammation that you have. So any pain, any inflammation that you have, whether it's in your gut, whether it's arthritis, whether it's itchiness and other sensations on the skin, which is kind of like pain in a way, or whatever, it's basically out of control inflammatory responses caused by your immune system. Now, why does your you keep going asking why, keep going back up the chain and asking why is that happening? Why does your immune system kick in and become a problem? Well, your immune system's a bloody complex thing. It has different components to it. It's not all one thing. It's one big army, if you like, or one could call it one big football team. But the goalkeeper is not the same as the centre forward or the left back. So each player in the immune system is part of the team. And depending on what's going on with your immune system, what's challenging your immune system, you'll have a different response. And then that will cause different types of inflammation in different places. And that will lead to potentially different problems. So we'll just make a very, very quick distinction. When you get a virus, you need inflammation of one kind. When you have a parasite in your gut, you need a different kind of inflammation. So they're both infections, but the inflammatory response is different. And we won't go into any more science because that becomes complex.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've just alluded to an idea of why do you get inflammation? Well, it's because generally something's in your body that shouldn't be there, that your body doesn't really want to have in there. That could be, hay fever is an inflammatory response as well, by the way. Could be toxins, could be viruses, it could be foods. You know, foods is a big one. Foods that you're eating every day could be causing inflammation 24/7 in your body and you don't even know it. And that can lead to massive problems.
Let's come back to that. Because that's really right? So there's a couple of questions that are coming in, but I just want to drop it in. But if we could just touch on the answer and then keep going, because I want to concentrate on dis-ease, and then I want to get into my blood results that came back and you described them as carnage and stuff like that. But we had a great question from Jason. Says, can you explain the long-term effects of Candida infection in the body? You got anything off the top of your head about that and the effects of that?
Yeah, I'll do it as quickly as I can. So Candida is a type of yeast, and it can change into fungus. So we basically call it a fungal infection, which sounds grim, right? Fungal infection. You've got fungus in your body. Oral thrush, where you get white coating on your tongue and can get quite nasty for some people. That's Candida. Vaginal thrush. So ladies with waterworks problems, that can be Candida as well. Many ladies have had those problems from time to time. So usually what will happen is the Candida will infect the hollow spaces of the body. Hollow spaces are the lungs, the mouth, genitourinary tract, and all the way down through the digestive system. The medical system acknowledges vaginal thrush and oral thrush and fungal overgrowth on the skin. It does not acknowledge gut overgrowth of fungi and Candida and other things, but that definitely happens. That's just I have no idea why they don't acknowledge it. It's just delusional. So it's deemed to be quackery if you talk about gut overgrowth of Candida. But I've had it, so I mean, unless I was making it all up in my own mind, I don't know. And I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of people who've had it. So it'll stay in those hollow spaces, and it'll shift your immune system out of balance, and it'll cause all kinds of different symptoms. It'll make toxins. So all of these little critters that can get into your body, they all have their own metabolism, and they'll all make toxins. They'll all excrete their shit into your body, basically. That's the best way to put it. Those toxins will also get your immune system interested. And your immune system will go, I don't like that one. And so it'll start to mount responses. And those toxins will get around the body, and they'll also interfere with your nerves and potentially with the energy production in your body as well. So long-term Candida can make you feel really unwell. There's a very nasty type of Candida, which is usually only found in people who have things like AIDS or late-stage cancer, where their immune system is really tanked. When the immune system's tanked, the Candida just goes, we can have a party here. There's no surveillance. There's no police force to stop us growing and just proliferating, blooming out, get into the body. And that kills a lot of AIDS patients, actually. That's the reason why they die, because they get chronic infections that just can't be controlled, can't give enough drugs to control them, and they're off. And that's sad. So if you have Candida growing anywhere in the first place, it means your immune system's not at full whack.
Yeah.
So if you have any form of Candida overgrowth, wherever it is, it means your immune system's not working properly, because it shouldn't be there. Your immune system should be able to keep it in check. So now, the long-term consequences, if you're very immune suppressed, is death, which is exaggerated because that's not any of our audience, touch wood. But it's going to create chronic symptoms over time. And if you don't get rid of it and get your immune system rebalanced, it can make you feel very, very unwell. I've seen some remarkable turnarounds from dealing with yeast and fungal overgrowth in people's bodies. It can be crazy.
Well, from my own experience, obviously, the inflammatory problem started in my gut with as you read I know you've read chapter 8 today, even in Life Remixed, but it started in my gut, and that was my gut was giving me pain for years and years and years, and I didn't understand why. And I saw a nutritionist. I went for colonic irrigation. That was interesting. I thought that was a one-way street until I went up there.
I had that done as well. I don't try everything. Got to try everything.
Try everything once, mate. Yeah, absolutely. So the point is that it was cool, and so I've done all of that, and I've gone through all this process. And then, as I got diagnosed with a dis-ease. Now, Bob Proctor talks about a dis-ease. I expect John DeMartini says the same, right? Yeah. It's all connected, like we covered on earlier. I mean, have you got anything to add on to that before we move on to the next parts?
Yeah, but a body that's not at ease with itself. I think that's Bob Proctor's exact line in The Secret, if I remember correctly, 2005 or whatever. I think a body that is not at ease with itself. So disorder. We call health conditions disorders as well. A body that is not ordered, that's not in order. If your mind is not in order, your body will not be in order, and vice versa. So that it's in the language, it's subtly in the language, no matter what we call them. Health, by the way, derives from and health and healing derive from the word whole, a word that means whole, as in wholeness, not falling into a hole.
No, I'm with you. WH, yeah.
Exactly. So that's quite interesting etymology around that as well. But a body that's not at ease with itself, the body is designed to be healthy. It's designed to be acting normally. I define health or wellness as being in a body that you don't notice. Just don't notice it. You get on with your purpose, your mission, which is obviously a big part of your coaching. You've got to find your purpose, your mission in life, get into the flow. You just don't notice that your body's even there.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, your flow is doing exercise and dancing. But you know what I mean. You're not noticing any niggles or any form of dysfunction or dis-ease in it. Everything's fine. So that's that's why getting people living with purpose and finding their mission can actually be a real important healing tool. Yeah. You might not need to change your diet and things. Just living by purpose is enough in some cases to get people's symptoms well under control and get them feeling a lot better again. But that body that's not at ease with itself, there's a number of different systems in the body that are the primary ones that you need to look at: immune system, digestive system, nervous system, hormone system, detox system. So it's like 4 or 5, I think. You can map them out like the Olympic rings, those 5 symbols on the Olympic rings, and they're all joined together like the rings on the symbol. You can't have a problem in one area and not have a knock-on effect somewhere else. The body's interconnected. So this is why the gut can cause a problem. Quick segue into a case study that I think your audience will be interested in. 2.5-year-old kid. Parents approach me and a medical doctor who's a friend of mine, and talk about this poor little kid's having epileptic seizures, dozens of these little seizures per day. So there's no drug that's working for it. I think they call it recalcitrant. It's just not. There's no drug. They've tried everything. They've been to all the top pediatricians, neurologists. Nothing's working. So they're at their wit's end. Okay, when did it start? When it was weaned. Has anybody mentioned food might be a part of this? No. Okay, what's he eating? And it's like classic people who are, I'm gonna use this word, I don't like it. It's people who are disempowered. They're not empowered to make optimal decisions about health, which is all of us at some point, because we're never taught. We're not fucking taught this at school. The government doesn't teach us. The education system doesn't teach us. We got to try and figure it out for ourselves, usually because of a period of feeling shit.
Through pain, yeah.
We need to find out what we need to do. So they're clueless, and lots of love to them, but they were clueless at the time. Now, I sent them a link to a video by a neurologist in America who's written 3 books, which people should have a look at them. One's called Grain Brain. One's called Brain Maker. He's got a new one out that I can't remember the name of, Detox Brain or something like that. Anyway, he's got a video showing 4 case studies where getting off gluten resolved epilepsy in these people. And he goes through them all step by step. And so I said, the clue is in the fact, I can't say for sure. I don't know, guys. It might be that there's a food trigger here. Let's do some of the tests, get him to poo. He had really bad poo. I think his dad said like atomic bowel movements every morning or something. Radioactive bowel movements, I think was the description. So that was a clue that there's something going on in his gut as well, right?
Clearly,
so this has to be worth a try. Get him on a gluten-free diet, right? It's free. It's 100% safe. You can't lose. There isn't a downside to it. Try it. So they took this video to the top pediatrician neurologist at I think it's Bart's. It's St. Bartholomew's Hospital, isn't it, in London, I think. It's the big kids hospital. Or was it Great Ormond Street? I can't remember. One of them. I don't know. And so this is one of the things that you get with the medical system sometimes, because they're entrenched in a certain model.
Yeah.
And it pisses me off. I'm not going to lie to you. It's one of the things that drives me. It irritates the hell out of me. And they showed him the video and said, should we try it? And he peered over at them and said, that's not how we do science. Because you know that science is supposed to be a double-blind, placebo-controlled trial. And unless it passes that test, it's worthless. So the fact that people get well is irrelevant. It's not been proven with a placebo-controlled trial. So anyway, with this doctor that I was working alongside, we got the family and the parents into a room, and it was like, it's like, I don't know, it was like talking to Homer Simpson. These guys are super intelligent people, really successful, wealthy, but this was like a wall, trying to bash a wall down to get them to see that they can't lose by trying a gluten-free diet. So anyway, they agreed. Guess what happened?
Tell me.
Epilepsy gone in a week.
Cool.
Completely. And so it shows you the inflammatory response in the gut is causing a major problem in the brain because of the connection between the two. And it looks like a head symptom in the brain, but it's actually a problem in the gut. So that's the Olympic rings. You can have a problem in one part of the body that causes something somewhere else and be blissfully unaware that that's happening. And that will never be uncovered by the medical system, ever, because they're compartmentalized with nobody joining all the parts of the body together. Cardiologist for the heart, hepatologist for the liver, gastroenterologist for the gut, on and on.
I mean, you can see everyone watching, and there's a lot of people watching, a lot of people commenting as well. And I can't get you all on the screen because there's something quite a little bit wrong with StreamYard, but I'm watching on the Facebook page as well. But you can see why I've got Dave as my nutritional coach, right? Because at the end of the day, this guy comes in and here I am talking about purpose, goals, vision, growth, financial health, everything. But we all need a coach, and we all need someone who can come in and tell us something, and we go, oh, right, okay, that's a new way of looking at stuff. And Dave is brilliant at it, as you can tell, right? Trisha, whose husband Mark, I hope he's watching as well, Trish. She says she loves that, define health as a body you don't notice. And I would think that actually Mark and you, Dave, could have a really good conversation, because Mark's health has not been great, and I would love you to have a chat with him. Have a chat with him at some point. I've got another client and friend as well, says, be interested to know if Dave has ever come across plantar fibromas in the feet. Do you know much about that?
I'll look it up over the next 2 or 3 days, and I'll whiz you an email over with what I think. I've just not come across in my practice.
That's fine. I appreciate that, and that's really cool. So another one that's come up here says, so if you think you have an inflammatory issue internally to do with food, where do you start? So I'll jump in on that one because I employed Dave. I'd come out of a very stressful corporate job. I was in a really bad way. Financially, I was okay because I'd worked hard for a few years, but my body had given out. You saw the size of my knees, Dave. They were like balloons, weren't they? They were terrible,
Nothing, but it wasn't funny at the time.
Well, it wasn't funny. I mean, I had a doctor tell me that, well, that might just be the way it is, Mark. Unlucky, you're going to be like that forever. And I remember Emma crying on the way back from a doctor's visit, and I was like, no, Em, don't worry. Listen, we're gonna fix this. We're gonna find a way to fix this. And now, as well as I do, that I had gone vegan maybe 15 years before, 10, 15 years before. I'd gone vegan following Tony Robbins' Living Health as he did it at the time. Because I was like, well, I need to clean up my act. And I listened to Tony Robbins' Living Health. I didn't have you at the time. So I listened to Living Health for Tony Robbins. And he said, give up meat, wheat, dairy, sugar, alcohol, drugs, everything else. Give up all the stuff that you're putting into, all the toxic crap you're putting into your body, and see if that works, And I was like, well, I've got nothing to lose. So that's what I did. And it worked. And it worked brilliantly well. For me over the period of about 6 months. And I did also leave a couple of toxic situations and stressful situations. I got bankrupt. I had all this other crap all going on at once. I definitely wasn't at ease, but I had all this stuff going on, and I managed to sort of like take myself out of it, detoxify myself and go vegan. And I ran some marathons, as you well know. I ran 4 marathons. And that to me was incredible, because what that taught me was mind over matter. And obviously also the diet and the way the diet works in the body was that actually perhaps I don't need all that stuff that I'd been taught when I was a kid, that you need your protein and you need this and you need that, and you only get protein from meat and all that stuff. So I was like, right, okay. So I did some study at that level, and I got it made sense to me. And I've put a lot of it in Life Remix because it's entry level stuff to get people hooked in. As in, like, there's stuff here that can work for you if you go with it. But then I had all the second flare up at the corporate job, and my knees were done in. I could barely walk again. I was like, oh, this is a disaster. And then I found you, and we got talking. And I remember very, very clearly. We went for some tests. You sent me for some food allergy tests, which I did the blood spot food allergy tests. you sent me up to Wigmore Street and we did blood and stool and urine and all sorts of other sorts of tests. And I remember those tests coming back, and on our first coaching session together, you said to me, you said, Mark, will you go back to eating meat, please? And in all honesty, you could have just like knocked me over, because as far as I was concerned, all I needed to do was go vegan and give up all the sugar and de-stress myself from the job, and that would work. Explain what, because you saw my food allergy test at the time and you described it as carnage. Do you remember?
I do remember. I remember it well. It's still by far the worst I've seen in anybody.
Yes.
It was brilliant. That happens because you support Chelsea. That's the reason. That's,
keep going.
No, but in all seriousness, I'll go back to the original question, and then I'll go back to your stuff. That there's probably, I would say, 4 or 5 foods that you can just avoid straight away and just try it for free without spending any money. Just try this. Avoid gluten. Avoid cow's milk. All products with cow's milk, including cheese and yogurt and all of these different things. You might be able to get away with some butter. You can keep that in, as long as it's decent quality. Then avoid all the processed oils like sunflower oil and all these different things as much as possible. Stick to butter and olive oil and a bit of coconut oil as your fats. Just try and avoid all the processed stuff. And then soy, anything with soy in it. Now, there are other foods that can cause problems for people, but if you're going to take, let's say the government wanted to make a set of recommendations for nutrition, God forbid that it would ever be so sensible to do so. But let's imagine that it wanted to give the top 5 foods that cover 67 million people that are probably going to have the biggest bang for the buck. It would probably be those 5, right? So avoid those. So gluten, cow's milk, processed oils, soy, and what was the other one I said? Gluten, cow's milk, processed oils, soy. Those 4 will do to start with.
Yeah. You said the oils, yeah.
Now, going back to your question of the vegetarian, plant-based approach. So here's after 20. I've been doing this for 20 years nearly now. 19 years this year. 19 years. There isn't a right or wrong diet for humanity.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different approaches out there that are very confusing, and you need to figure out as an individual what's right for you. And what's right for you is going to depend on your genetics, your ancestry, your level of activity, and it's also going to depend on your current state of health. Because when you put food into your stomach and your intestine, there are 2 things at play there. There's the food and there's your body. And your body may be the make or break factor as to whether a food is right or wrong for you, not the food itself. Right? Yeah. That's something that is not really talked about very much. So there's a lot of dogmatic people telling you should be eating a certain way. There's the big dietary approaches are plant-based, vegan, however you want to call it. No animal products. Let's just say no animal products. There's then paleo, which is eat according to how your ancestors ate 20,000 years ago, 10 or 20,000 years ago. That's a solid starting point, actually, but it's still not necessarily right for everybody. You've got ketogenic eating, which is high fat, lower protein, very low carb. And then you've got carnivore. There's people out there writing books now about carnivore. Just eat meat and you don't even need any plant-based stuff. Jordan Peterson has been one of those advocates. Now, there's nothing inherently right or wrong with those approaches. It's all about how those approaches are going to work for you as a unique individual. And so I always say that, look, it's like if we can thrive on a plant-based diet, and we can thrive on a ketogenic diet, and we can thrive on a paleo diet, and we can thrive on a carnivore diet, it probably means that we need a good mix of those things, because we seem to be able to thrive on any or all of them. So why go to the extremes of doing one of those? Now, some people, for certain purposes, might benefit from one of those approaches for a while. But that brings us on to that really key point, which is the diet that gets you right in the first place, that heals you in the first place, might not be the right diet for you forever.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's really important to understand with eating is when people feel really a lot better when they change their diet, it's usually because what they've taken out rather than what they're eating.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So you get very rapid responses in people where they go, I switched to a plant-based diet and within a week, all of these symptoms had gone away. Well, you could have switched to any diet that was sensible and your symptoms might have gone away. It's the stuff that you've stopped eating that is the key. You've stopped eating shit. If you stop eating shit and you go to eating good food, it doesn't matter whether it's meat-based, plant-based, whatever, you're going to feel better. So we've got...
Hold on, Dave, hold on. Have you got that on your website? Is that what you're saying?
I can't even remember what I said now. I must be in the floor or something.
Shit. Yeah, go on, carry on.
It's the shit that you're eating that's causing the problems a lot of the time. Now, it gets more complex for people, right? As you and I both know with your case, because sometimes you can be eating a diet for a long time or a set of foods for a long time. And over time, your body can end up mounting an immune response to a lot of those foods. So the clue is when you have an autoimmune condition, autoimmune just means your own immune system is attacking your own tissues and organs. And yours just happened to be arthritis. So the collagen and the synovial tissues and stuff, getting a hammering from your immune system. Your immune system sees that tissue as an enemy. And so it attacks, just like it would attack a parasite or a bacterium or a virus. So that's not good. When you have that going on, you're nearly always reacting to foods. There's nearly always food sensitivities. Now, I don't know how much detail we should go into. I'll try and do this in 20 seconds. A food allergy is not the same as a food intolerance, is not the same as a food sensitivity. They're all different. And there's a great deal of confusion. People go and have like a skin scratch test for food allergies, and they go, they're all negative. I can eat anything. No, it doesn't work that way. That's just one player in your football team that you're testing the fitness of. It's not all the other players. There are different ways the immune system and the body reacts to foods. So these food sensitivities create inflammation in the gut, or they get absorbed into the bloodstream in a state where they haven't been digested properly. And then your immune system says, what the hell's that? And it attacks it in the body. And now you end up with all sorts of things. That's what was happening with you. You had dozens of foods, all the ones that you were eating regularly, your immune system had become sensitized to. So yours were food sensitivities rather than food allergies per se. And I've never seen anything like your test. It was a mind-boggling experience to look at that test result when it came along. So I have to thank you, because it was a monumental point in my career seeing that.
Well, if you see the picture of my name,
hang on,
let's go that way.
Inflammation in the gut causes inflammation in the body. And if you heal the gut, sometimes the inflammation in the body just goes away. So I think I've got one testimonial from just somebody reading my book on the website, the H. pylori one, and it just says, after 30 days, my rheumatoid arthritis has gone and all the blood test markers are normal. Well, that's because the rheumatoid arthritis was just a message saying, actually, you need to sort the gut out. Again, the Olympic ring symbol where everything's connected.
I would say also as well, I mean, I love those quick turnaround stories. And certainly, I've had a couple of those myself that have been like borderline miraculous. And if anyone's wondering, by the way, Dave is somewhere north. Where are you?
I'm in near Leeds, and I'm just trying to get. The sun's just come down, and I can't get my. I'm just going to leave it.
So, mate, it's lovely. It's lovely. It's like the Blues Brothers. I have seen the lights, and it's. But no, it's really cool. And obviously you're quite a way north of us here in London. So that's why you've still got the sunshine where it's pretty dark here. But look, it's all good. And look, I mean, Dave, you read chapter 8 today. Was there other bits that kind of struck out or jumped out at you? Did you understand the the connection in my frustration, if you like, about how things just weren't going for me before I met you, and how I was sort of up, down, without actually having any consistency? And also then when I say the bit about the kind of quick turnarounds, it's also there's a consistent approach here, isn't there? You and I have been working together for 3 years and we're still going.
Yeah, well, we had a bit of a break, didn't we? We did a year and that worked pretty well. You had the surgery as well. And then we slacked off a little bit. I'll say we, just so I don't point the finger at you.
Yeah, carry on. But overall, I've still been following you. You've still been following me. I had a book to write and all that, right? So, but we've worked together for a while.
About the roller coaster and things, there's so much to understand and learn about health. It's mind-boggling. And I think people simplify it too much in their own mind, and that leads to a false expectation. So when they go and think, right, I need to sort out my health now, they go onto Amazon and think, what book shall I buy? And then they go, well, it doesn't look as simple as it might be, because there's all of these conflicting opinions and things out there. There's hundreds of them. I think the last time I looked at nutrition and diet books on Amazon, I think there was over 100,000 results for books. Wow. And you go, well, which one do I pick? It's like pin the tail on the donkey. You know what I mean? And you're playing roulette really as to whether you get the one that's going to be right for you. So those ups and downs, and it gets really frustrating because people put their faith in the medical system, because from knee high to a grasshopper, when we're kids, we're led to believe that the doctor is almost a godlike figure that knows everything, and that and my God, if you ever get sent to a specialist, then that's God on steroids, you know. And so we are definitely getting the best care, that's the available care that's out there. So let's not slag the healthcare system off, because I've benefited from the healthcare system enormously. My family has. When there's an emergency need to treat something that's getting serious, they are masters of that, and I would never even attempt to go into that domain. So that's not the issue. The issue is there's a paradigm and a box that all those medical professionals sit in, and that might not be the right box for a lot of people. And so you need to get outside that box. The trouble with getting outside that box is it becomes overwhelming. Even if you follow somebody on Instagram who's teaching exercise, and you go through all the videos, there's hundreds of different exercises on there, and you just go, which ones do I do? I've only got 3 hours a week to do this. So which ones am I going to do? And so I would say that I did a course earlier this year. We didn't communicate as much and work together last year as much as maybe we could have done, but I stumbled across a course that attracted me earlier this year, and I crammed it in a month. It's supposed to be a year long, and I did it in a month. I postponed some of my consulting, and I just did that course and studied. And I sat there again just going, I can't believe I didn't know that. Yeah. And that's after nearly 20 years of doing this work. And that, you know, all these books behind me, it's a constant need to learn and have a framework that I bring in all of the different parts of learning. That's how we get people off the roller coaster and get steady state, systematic progress, knowing exactly what to do and in what sequence, not in a month or a week, but over a period of 6 to 12 months. Just think about it. If you make one change related to your health per week in a year, that's 52 changes. How could you fail to feel a lot better after making 52 changes? But if I say to you, you've got to do 52 changes before next Friday, you're just going to go, no way. You know, the frog's just going to jump out of the boiling water. There's just no chance whatsoever that you're ever going to do that. So coaching and health coaching, just like any other coaching, is all about making changes in increments. Yeah. And you'll find that there are more important changes to make sooner. So do them first. Get the big rocks handled, then add the pebbles, and then do the fine sand at the end. And that's how we work with people. We go, right, what is the really big stuff that needs to be done here based on the health history, the symptoms, and whatever lab tests we need to run with people as well to figure out, right, what is it that's going on in you, not your next door neighbor, or not in the people who all the books on Amazon are talking about. What's going on in you individually? And let's work on that and ignore the outside world and what their opinions are, because we need to fix you according to your needs.
And I can't stress that enough. Stress that enough, because I did follow a kind of mass vegan kind of thing. Although at the time, it was quite a long time ago, I was still considered a bit of a weirdo. But I did follow that mass vegan kind of thing. And I thought, well, I'll give that a go. Tony Robbins said it worked for him. I'll give it a go. And it did work until it didn't work. And when it didn't work, thankfully, I found Dave. I was introduced to Dave via a couple of other, my KGW coach, Gordon, funnily enough, and ManMeat, and then to you, Dave. And, you know, you and I have connected in a really great way. And I know we're going to work together a lot in the future, because what you bring is very different to what I bring. But people need both things. You know what I mean? They need both of these messages. The way they need Bob Proctor and Dr. John DiMartini, they need Mark Wilkinson and David Hompes, without doubt. So I think it's very, very powerful what you're talking about. I do want to touch on a couple of things as well. I've got another question that's come in from Trush, but I've got a couple of coaching clients, like, women coming up into their 50s and stuff, talking about menopause and some of them before that, talking about period pains as well and stuff like that. I mean, there are nutritional things if the proper tests are run on that individual, obviously male and female, but this is particularly for female. But if the proper tests are run, you can recommend certain things that would be very beneficial for a woman who's suffering with a lot of period pains or in the future going through the menopause. You can do that, can't you?
100%. And it's not, I don't want to belittle that as a subject area because it's huge, but sometimes it's not that difficult to get rid of those symptoms. God or the grand organized designer or whatever we want to call spirit didn't design women to suffer every month with period pains and mood swings and things. There can be a little bit of a perturbation in those things, but there shouldn't be the level of symptoms that a lot of women experience. Can I tell another story just because it's a belter? Do we have 2 minutes?
Listen, mate, we've got all the time we need. The floor is yours.
I actually had a website dedicated to all of that. I took it down because the H. pylori project took off and I couldn't handle both of them. So I actually did quite a lot of work on female hormonal symptoms when I was back between sort of about 2009 and 2012-13. So usually what happens is that there's an imbalance in the hormones estrogen and progesterone, but they're only imbalanced because of other things. So you go back and asking why, right? So why do you have these symptoms? It's an imbalance between estrogen and progesterone. Usually there's too much estrogen relative to progesterone in the second half of the menstrual cycle, anytime from ovulation all the way through to when the period starts. So they call it estrogen dominance. That's not always the case, but it often is. And that can be exaggerated or exacerbated by many different things: diet, lifestyle, blood sugar, stress, etc., toxins. And so if you use the same approach and ask why, you'll find the answer. Sometimes it's relatively simple. Sometimes it might take peeling a few layers of the onion away to get to the cause. But my favorite case study, again, because it's close to my heart with this, is I met a girl in 2008 named Anna. And Anna and I were due to get married actually before we broke up in 2011. But we're still in touch. We're still really good friends. Now, when I met her, she was having incredible problems with her menstrual cycle. So she would she'd get such bad period pains, and her skin would break out, and she'd feel moody and cry at the TV ads and things like that. That's often how women describe it. You sort of they cry at the bloody Andrex advert, and it's the hormones that are causing changes in the way the brain works. So it's not like they're mad. It's actually a physical imbalance that's leading to that. But often they get told it's all in the head, right? By ignorant men, and some doctors just think, it's all in your head, get on with it, which is travesty. Now, Anna, sometimes I learned that previously her brother would sometimes have to take her to hospital because the pain would be that bad that they thought something really serious was going on. And that goes all the way back to when she was living in Poland, because she's from Poland. So she'd been on the pill and then come off the pill and gone on another one, and then come off that one and gone on another one. Every time she went on a pill, she'd feel better in some ways, but she'd feel worse in other ways. So there was a payoff every time to feel better. And the doctor had got so exasperated with her by the end of it that he said jokingly, "You need a boyfriend." So this is funny. She met me, and I just finished my first functional medicine training course. And a lot of that was on these female hormonal imbalances. So guess what we did? We did some lab testing. She tried plant-based diet. She tried different types of exercise and Pilates and yoga, and all of these had, again, some improvements, but nothing had really hit the nail on the head, so to speak. And we tested her hormones, saw what was going on: gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, processed oil free, or as low as possible diet. And I gave her some support for the hormones, nutritional support in the form of supplements. And that was to address the estrogen progesterone stuff. And lo and behold, she had actually, and I need to put this in just in case this happens to anybody out there in the future, she felt worse the first month. But I remembered that in one of the lessons from the course, the doctor had said sometimes there's a worsening, that it only usually happens for 1 month.
Yeah.
And then the following month, she had no symptoms, no period pains, no mood swings, skin was a lot better, just like, whoa. And that improvement held. That was great. So it's like the irony of it was, yes, she did need to meet a boyfriend.
It just happened to be you.
Me, because I suddenly somehow gotten together with her with that skill set that I just gained. Again, another synchronicity. Yeah. And so fast forward many months, years, and we broke up around Christmas a couple of years later. And guess what happened? All the symptoms came back. Now, that's not because she wasn't with me anymore, but it was the stress.
Yeah.
So one mantra that I want to just leave everybody with, if they remember this one, it'll do them well. Stress beats sex every time. The more stress you're under, the more stress hormones your body will make. And that will be at the expense of the sex hormones. So with women, that'll lead to menstrual problems, potentially, or might even move them into menopause sooner. Early menopause, that's called. In men, testosterone will get tanked, and they'll probably lose their libido, feel grumpy, moody. You know, all the same symptoms that a woman will have with her period, if the hormones are imbalanced, will occur in a man. It'll just be slightly different because obviously we've got different hormones involved there. So whatever stress, and this leads us back to inflammation. So whenever there's inflammation in the body, whether that's from eating foods that are inflaming, chronic infections, toxins, nutrient deficiencies, or whatever, even more, too much exercise can cause that as well. Chronic inflammation is deemed to be stressful by the body. So you'll make more stress hormones if you're inflamed, or if you have stress with your work life, relationships. The body just responds to stress in ostensibly the same way, no matter what the source of the stress is. And so, and the stress causes inflammation as well. So it's all one big vicious cycle.
It is.
I guess all I do is help people break that vicious cycle in the way that's appropriate for them. And in some people, if I learn that that these symptoms came on when they retired, or that these symptoms came on when they were divorced, I might say you need a week with Tony Robbins, or you need a DeMartini facilitator to deal with the stress, or with the Mark Wilkinson. You don't need food changes at the moment because that's going to be too stressful. Yeah. You're telling me you don't have time, and I'm going to ask you to spend time on it. So what's the vicious cycle for each person? How do we get in and arrest that vicious cycle and turn it into a virtuous cycle over time? That's really what it's all about. And we consider the mind, we consider the body, the nutrition, the exercise, all of it. We can't separate any of that stuff out. It's got to be looked at and given equal weighting. And only when you start speaking to the person, ask them the right questions, get to see what they're doing in life, how things have been going over the last couple of years or whatever, look at that whole detail, will you? Only then do you know where the right direction is for that person. And so what I tend to do is I'll pretty much take anybody on. Cancer is something that I don't work with. So that's the one thing. I'll take anybody on as long as they're willing to learn and do what I want them to do. If nutrition and functional medicine are really not working at all in the first 60 to 90 days, and the person's just doing everything and just going, I'm gobsmacked because you've told me I'm doing everything you told me to do and it's not working, I'm then going to start to suspect that something else might be more beneficial. And I'm not going to hang on to that client for the sake of needing to, massage my ego or take more money away. I'm going to say, you need to, for my stuff to work, you actually need to go and get rid of this roadblock first with somebody else. And classic case of that, not involving the mind, would be, I've given you a couple of case studies on the mind there, and you know all about those as well. There was a guy I was working with a while back who had heartburn. And his lab test showed the reasons why he should have heartburn. He had H. pylori and he had some other things. And we did all the stuff that I did to get rid of H. pylori and heal my heartburn, and none of it worked. It was just like, it's not working. It's getting worse. What the hell is going on? So I said, You've been in the construction industry for a while. You lift heavy things. Go and see an osteopath, not any old osteopath, one who just will be able to manipulate your diaphragm. Because your diaphragm is your breathing muscle. It gets tight. You can get a hernia, hiatal hernia. So the guy does his little wizardry with his fingers and pulls the hernia and pulls the diaphragm, loosens it all off, and then the heartburn's gone. Now, it doesn't need me at all. So that's another case study where you actually need somebody who's good with their hands to get in and manipulate the structure and mechanical elements of the body to resolve the problem. So I've seen heartburn disappear with nutrition, with functional medicine when they've had H. pylori and stuff. I've seen it disappear with manual work, and I've seen it disappear when people have shift in their psychology. So heartburn's not one thing. It's a message from your body saying, pay attention to something in your life. It's like if you're going along in the highway and the dashboard lights come on, you go, shh, I'm useless with cars. I have no idea what to do with them. What the hell is the dashboard? I'm going into the garage the next day saying the freaking dashboard light's on. If the mechanic goes in there and says, I'm just going to adjust the dashboard light bulb, I'm going to go, no, hang on a minute. I want to know why the dashboard light has come on. I need you to take the damn thing apart and figure it out so that I don't career into a tree if it's the brakes or if it's something really serious. So I liken the symptoms to the dashboard analogy. The symptoms are like the dashboard lights coming on, the warning lights. You can go to a doctor and take a drug to try and put the warning light out, which is what most of the drugs do. They just try and control the symptoms. Or you can figure out why the dashboard light came on. Why is the symptom there in the first place? Is it psychosomatic? Is it psychological? Is it stress? Is it something you're eating? Is it something that's developed over time that we need to do more investigation in and fix?
And the thing about that, Dave, is the NHS, God bless them, they're doing their best, and they're certainly in this time of COVID, they've been overwhelmed and stuff like that, but they are national sick service, essentially. We go and see them when we're broken, and they manage to get us back up if we're lucky and back out the door. But they can't possibly run these tests that I've spent, and I've spent some good money with you, and I'm quite happy to do it because it's money that, I'd probably be spending it on my car. So spend it on myself and actually make sure that I'm can drive the car or ride the motorbike or play the golf. So the point is that I've invested in myself with you and with lots of other coaches, but with you on nutrition because I'm worth it. and I want to know this stuff. I want to know what's going on under the hood. You know what I mean? And I want to fix any problem.
You're worth it, and investing now means a lot less trouble later. Now, if you educate yourself around this and you understand it, you don't need to understand it to the level that I understand it. The reason I need to understand it to such a deep level is I need to understand what to do if something doesn't work with somebody. I need to know how to navigate all of the terrain when I'm working with clients. Most people need a very, very watered down version of that doesn't take that long to learn and takes a few months to master. Once you've learned it, you are empowered in your own health. Now, that puts you at tremendous advantage because you and I speaking and everybody listening and everybody in our wider communities and what have you, we're all part of the statistics, and the statistics aren't good. There's been a very significant increase in life expectancy since the turn of the 19th to 20th century, 1900s. The life expectancy was down at about 47 in the late 1800s. And now it moved up over the 100 years to about 74. So the 4 and the 7 were reversed. That was mostly, though, due to prevention of infant deaths, which were massive at the time. You were lucky if your baby survived back in the day. So if your baby dies at age 0, that's going to bring the average life expectancy crashing down. And it's improved because when people have heart attacks now and strokes and accidents and things, the bloody magnificent medical system is able to excel in those situations and save people so they can then live for longer. My dad had a heart attack in 2018. He should have died by rights, but he survived. And it's miraculous what they did in that short space of time to save his life. He had a stroke a month later, and they were magnificent again. So it's like, you can't knock the medical system. we need a social healthcare system, socialized healthcare system, mixed with personal responsibility that meets somewhere in the middle, so we get the best of both. It's up to us as slightly more open thinkers to try and inspire more people to become more empowered in their own health, because we are all part of the statistics. Dementia, heart disease, cancer, lung disease, kidney disease. At some point, most people are going to get one of those. And I'd rather not get one, because I know prevent it as best I can. And I'd rather be in control and spend the money on that. And live till hopefully my 90s and beyond. And then hopefully, either die banging my head on a coral reef surfing or something, when I'm 90, or just die peacefully in my sleep. I don't want to have my family suffering because I'm in a home for God knows how long with dementia and all of these horrible things. And so I don't want to be a burden on the healthcare system. I want to support it by teaching people to not need it as much. We're all going to need it at some point. We're all going to need it at some point. It's there for us, but we want to be as responsible and empowered as we can. And there's so many tools and simple things we can do that drastically cut our risk of becoming diseased, diseased, and disordered in our older years, that it's criminal for more people not to know about this stuff.
That's our mission, Dave. That's our mission, mate. We're working on this, right? We're together. It's really important.
Nearly forgot. You told me that I needed to speak about my blood pressure.
Yes, go on.
Okay, so telling everybody, I have a predisposition to high blood pressure. On my dad's side of the family, I just said my dad's had a heart attack and stroke in his mid-70s. His mum had heart failure. Both his sisters have had heart attacks. So there's a reasonable assumption that there's some heart disease in the family on that side, some genetic predisposition to it. Now, interestingly, there's not been any cancer in that side of the family. Again, touch wood. But that's weird, right? Now, on my mum's side of the family, she had rheumatoid arthritis. Her brother, my uncle, had rheumatoid arthritis. The other brother's got type 2 diabetes. My granddad died of a heart attack in his early 70s. And his wife, my grandmother, had severe rheumatoid arthritis that kept her, well, by the end, she was pretty wheelchair bound, to be honest. It was not good. Now, I'm looking at my genetics going, I've been dealt a hand here. I've got mum's genes, I've got dad's genes, and neither of them look particularly good. There hasn't been much longevity in their parents. So I'm going along, cocky. This was another humbling experience as I've had a few. As soon as you get cocky, you get humbled. 2011, I go and have a cardiovascular screen with somebody who's trying to sell me some business opportunities. And I'm rushing on the tube to get to Notting Hill. I've had a couple of coffees during the day, ramped up, obviously, really pumped up. I get there, it takes my blood pressure, and it's a little bit high. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I've just been rushing around. It's a hot day. I've had a couple of coffees. Of course, my blood pressure is going to be high. I'm healthy, Dave. I've worked on myself for 4 or 5 years, and I'm tops. I don't need to worry about that. When I relocate back to Yorkshire in 2013-14, I have to change my GP, and I forget to take the forms that I needed to the appointment. So I realize in the waiting room, run back home. It's about 3 minutes away, that's all. Run back to the doctor's. She takes my blood pressure. Hey, your blood pressure's a little bit high. Of course it is. I've just been running around. But it did twig. I was like, that's twice somebody's told me that. So then at that point, again, synchronicity kicks in. I'm starting to learn how to use something called Nutrigenomics. Sounds fancy. That's where I look at people's genes. I can look at your genetics, and I can look at whether you have risks for certain problems. So I'm doing this course, and the guy says, based on looking at these genes, there's a higher risk of people having high blood pressure. Nobody should have high blood pressure once this is understood and you know what the genetics are, because this is how you fix it. Now, you're going to be another example of this, because we've got to work on this with you, if you remember. You've got some of these genes as well. And you've got slightly high blood pressure. We've got to get that down. So it's a great story to lead into what we've got to do with you. So I'm going to start measuring my bloody blood pressure again, because this is interesting. So I get the blood pressure cuff from Boots, the 30 quid one, just the electric one for the, I think this one I got for the wrist. I'm lying in bed at night, chilled, zenned out as I can be. I'll do my blood pressure when I'm relaxed. So I do 5 for 7 consecutive nights, blood pressure on both arms. And I record them on my phone and just average out of the 5, what's the average of the 5 for each arm? And I'm stunned to go, it's too high. It's consistently too high. It was about
healthy Dave.
I'm healthy Dave. How can my blood pressure be high? I'm eating well, I'm doing everything. By now, I'm living by my own rules that I'm teaching everybody. This is not like 10 years before when I was party animal. I'm now really pretty straight and narrow with what I'm doing. I'm doing all the DeMartini work to balance my psychology. I'm eating well, I'm exercising, plenty of fresh air. I live near the country. What's going on? And there was, it was really interesting because previously I'd done some tests on my nutrient levels. This is just a slight aside. And my magnesium and potassium levels were really low. And again, I'm like, I don't understand why that's happening because I'm eating well. And I was even taking supplements and it's like, why are they low? And I could never figure out that potassium magnesium thing. My potassium level was at that time lower than any client I've ever measured. That's crazy, right? So that ties in with what we're talking about. So I go, right, blood pressure's too high. I look online at the blood pressure charts of what my prognosis is. With the blood pressure where it was, potentially knocks off about 8 years of my life. I'm like, God, what's it all about? So then I go to the average. I looked at the average and then I looked at the highest levels because among the average readings, there were some really high ones, like 165 over 105, which is not good. When you're 40, it's not good. And it said like that could knock 13 and a half years off your life. So I'm going, whoa, that's humbled me. There I was with nothing in my blood tests, nothing in any of the lab tests I was doing that would tell me what's going on here. Yet I've got high blood pressure. That's seriously fucked up, if you excuse my language. So I go back to this course and my mind goes, that guy talked about blood pressure. I've got quite a lot of disease in my family. I'm going to do my genetics. So I do my genetics, figure out what's going on. My genes come back. I have every gene that you could associate with poor blood pressure stacked against me. Now, I just want to explain what I mean by that. Some diseases are genetic. So like cystic fibrosis, Down syndrome, there are various diseases where that's a slightly different level than what we're talking about. Yeah. These genes that I'm talking about don't dictate your destiny. These genes that we're talking about, you and I as humans and everybody listening, we all have the same genes, but we have slightly different versions of those genes, slightly different, and they can accelerate or slow down certain metabolic pathways in the body. And I'm just going to leave the science there. That's all I want to talk about. I had all the genes, the versions of the genes that affect blood pressure in a bad way. So nothing in my blood test, no doctor would have been able to say you need to do this or that, even nothing in the functional medicine tests that I use with my clients. But I've got high blood pressure. The genes were the answer. The genes were the answer. So I've opened the genes up and phoned Dad and gone, well, you dealt me a right shit set of cards here, mate. Thanks for this. Mum's died by now, so I can't sort of give her a hard time about it. But what I also did was I took some little testing strips, 30 quid a bottle for these testing strips, dab some saliva on it, and it tells you what your nitric oxide level is. Why is that important? Nitric oxide opens up your vessels and brings the blood pressure down. So you ever squeezed a hose pipe at the end?
Yes.
And the water's coming out. Well, the narrower it is, the more forcibly the water flies out, right? So when somebody you don't like walks past, just hide behind the hedge and give them a dose. So I'm going, right, the reason my blood pressure is so high is there's constriction in the vessels because I don't have enough nitric oxide. And I can figure this out by looking at the genes and just go, well, that's what it is. So there are certain nutrients that you can take, the three B vitamins, B6, B12, folic acid, which is B9. I take them, for a day. I go to sleep. I wake up the next morning, and the nitric oxide levels are as high as they possibly could be, whereas they'd been depleted. I sit down. I do my blood pressure. It's completely normal. I go, fuck, that's incredible. That is incredible. See, understanding my genetics, how that plays out in my physiology, which is the terrain that I need to understand, that everybody listening you don't need to go into that detail. I take the right nutrients that the guy tells me to take on the training course, and my blood pressure goes down and the nitric oxide goes up. And so I've got the mechanism, the nitric oxide going up, opens up my blood vessels, brings the pressure down. It's all there in the space of 24 hours without any doctor's intervention. I've got my blood pressure completely normalized at about 115 over 80 or whatever it was.
So I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting for your email tomorrow to give me a little bit of guidance on that bit as well, mate. So that's awesome. But yeah, what a brilliant story.
I wanted to share the message of that is we've got so detailed with the technology now that we're not just looking inside your body. We're not just looking inside your cell. We're looking inside the nucleus. We're unwrapping your DNA, and we're able to tell you what your genes look like. And then we're able to show you what you need to do with your nutrition and your lifestyle to optimize your genetic potential and make sure that your whatever hand you've been dealt doesn't cause you problems in the future. Now that's seriously cool.
That's amazing. And also, I started this hour and a half ago by saying you're a scientist. Now, listen, mate, you're a proper scientist, right? Compared to me and other people. I mean, I'm good at what I do. I'm great at what I do, but you are great at what you do, Dave, and I absolutely love it. I mean, there's a couple of other questions that has come up. One of them is, are you single? Which is an interesting one.
No.
You're not, are you? No, I didn't think so. No. That's but anyway, you're coming across very well. Clearly, you're getting a female fan club, Dave. So that's nice. This one's from Trish. Yeah.
I'm flattered.
Absolutely right. This is one from Trish. So we'll do this question, and then we'll get on to the remix opportunities, and then we'll call it a night, because you're amazing, Dave. Can I ask about mold toxicity, and what do you think could be done to help, apart from the obvious removal of the mold, to support the body and recover? You got any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it's pretty complex, that one. Okay, let me go take it from the top. You can have mold toxins in your body and have really not many problems if your detoxification system is able to get rid of them. In order to get to the mold toxins in your body, you're going to be exposed to them in your environment. We had black mold in one of our bathrooms last year, and we had to have the whole thing taken out. It was in the floor. It was the water. The building that we're in is an old 1800s school conversion, and there's a lot of wood, and the foundations were moldy and damp. Any building that's got water damage is going to have mold in it. It's way more common than you think. A cohort of people have genetics which make it very difficult for them to get rid of the mold toxins and the mold spores and things once they're inhaled. They can't get rid of them. So they build up and they can cause major health problems, huge problems. There's a book called Toxic by a Dr. Neil Nathan, Neil Nathan, as in Nathan, Neil Nathan. It's a green book. It's quite sciencey, but if you want to know about mold, it's the best resource I've found on that in terms of a book. It's really, really good. Now, you can have mold toxicity and have mild symptoms if your body's able to detox it. So I find sometimes that people have mold overgrowth, as I said, in the gut. Yeah. People sometimes see, when you get mold on the bread and cheese and stuff, sometimes people see that when they go to the toilet, when they're cleansing. It's not pretty, but we have to talk about it. We've got to be mature and say it's bloody yucky. It's not like a tapeworm, which is even worse. But it's nasty. The mold can create major problems. So the key to figure out with mold is, where's it coming from? If it's in your environment, you might need to either have a little bit of mild remediation done. You can get testing kits that tell you whether you've got mold in your house. You can do that. That's no problem. You can look at the website survivingmold.com. Survivingmold.com. Richie Shoemaker is the doctor. He's the dude who pretty much pioneered the whole mold movement against figuring out mold toxicity as being a problem in the first place, biotoxins in general. If it's growing in your gut, and that's the major source, you've just got a colony there, or mixed in with Candida and things like that, you can get rid of it by some reasonably aggressive cleansing procedures. You can use medications, you can use herbs, you can mix them up, and you can really, one thing we didn't get around to talking to as much as I might have liked to is, remember we said the immune system has all these different players.
Yeah.
It's one big team, but it's got different players in it. When you have mold toxicity, it'll skew your immune system in one direction. All the attention will go to one of the players and the rest will become weakened and redundant. And you need to rebalance the immune system, and then that'll stop the mold problems from coming back. Mm-hmm. But the question is generic. And as I think one of the messages I've tried to get across today is, you can't give a generic answer, even to something like mold toxicity. It's going to depend on the person and the environment in which they are living or spending time. It's going to need to be individualized. So you could still have 5 people with problems with mold. You might still have to deal with them all in a different way because they're all different individuals. So my take-home message is, if there's mold in the immediate environment and you know it's there, you've either got to get that remediated, which is expensive, or you've got to move the hell out of there and not spend time there and sell it to somebody you don't like, something like that. And then you've got to figure out what's going on with the within the body. Do you have the genes that make it very difficult to get rid of the mold, or do you just need some general support to get rid of anything that's already in the body and then get your immune system healed? Other than that, it's really difficult because I genuinely need to see what's going on in each individual case before I can lay out the plan properly.
And that's the point, Dave. And that's the really important point about what you do is similar to me. What I do is individual. You know, I mean, you work with individuals. You can work on mass at certain ways, and you can give good information like you've done tonight. But the very important point.
I was going to say one thing, Mike. Sorry, I was very rude to interrupt then.
Oh, go.
When we had all the mold, we both did something called a mycotoxins urine test. You could do same as your organic acids test. You pee in a pot and you send it off to the lab, and they'll look for specific mold toxins in the urine. I haven't done that many because I don't find it that useful with most clients, and it's expensive. It's over 300 quid, that test. And it doesn't give you that much for the money that you spend. I had more mycotoxins in my urine than I have seen in any other client, yet I had no symptoms. Okay. So the presence of the mycotoxins doesn't necessarily mean that you're guaranteed to have the symptoms. And the reason I had such high levels is I was breathing the stuff in every morning when I went in the shower, because it was in the floor underneath, and it comes up. So you've got a whole bunch of testing that you can do. I get very excited about this, but there's a certain set of tests that I like to use initially that give me massive amounts of information for the money people spend. The mycotoxins test isn't really one of those, because it only looks at about a dozen different markers, and it's only looking at mold. And yet some of these other tests that are really expansive and comprehensive are cheaper than that and give me 10 times more information. So when you're spending that money, you're getting infinitely more, not infinitely, but massive amounts of additional information. So I'm keen when people spend their money with me to go, let's find out as much as we can first, and then we can fine tune it later. If we need to run a mycotoxins test, we can do that, but I don't clinically find it that helpful. I think mold is a massive problem for some people. I can't judge what's going on unless I know the individual. It's just impossible.
And that's the point of all of this, is that, you know, I invested in myself to know about me. Yeah, I did all this stuff off the back of my own back to get myself well, to get myself moving, to get myself on this path of health and wellness, alongside my mental and my subconscious, you know, my thinking and my feeling mind. Get in touch with them, understand what it was that was repeating patterns, understand my dad had health issues, you know, my mum's thankfully very healthy, and in a good physical way. But for me, it was very important to understand about myself. And I've been on this mission now to understand myself for a long, long time. And it's beautiful. And the more I do it, the more I understand, and the more I research, and the more money I spend. And I will spend it with people that I respect, like you, Dave, despite the fact you don't seem to have a light in your house. It's getting a little.
I don't want to leave the screen. I just don't want to leave. I'm here, and I could go.
It's getting very dark. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's getting very dark there, Dave. I could just about see you.
It gets darker earlier up here. No, I just wanted to say one other thing as well, because you're hitting some really important buttons there, which is a lot of people don't come to me just because they want to feel better. They come to me because of what that means to them. It might be that they can play with the grandkid for another 10 years or even see the grandkids growing up. It might be that they can't run the business properly and be as productive as they want to be. And say, I've worked with quite a lot of footballers, and they come to me when they're older, when they're in the 30s, and they go, I need a couple more years on my career, and I don't feel great. Yeah. And so spending whatever they spend with me might mean that they get an extra, I don't know, in some cases, it might mean they get an extra couple of million in the bank that they maybe wouldn't get. So the value is not it's not in the coaching, the time we spend together. It's not maybe for some people, not even in the improvements of the symptoms. It's what that then gives them.
Yeah, it's about quality of life. Everything we talk about is quality of life. The whole thing with Life Remixed is finding quality of life. The way you think, the way you feel, the way you act, and the decisions that you make. And the decisions that I've made have been working with some top people, including yourself, Dave. And the more I've learned and the more I've studied, the better my life has got. And, we've worked together on and off, as I said, over the last 3 years. And I'm back in the gym now. I'm doing some great exercises. My legs are getting stronger. We're still working on a few finer points that you mentioned. But it's not a mistake that I'm getting healthier and healthier. I'm not stressed anymore. I've invested in myself. I'm studying. I'm learning. We've got another session. We've got a session every couple of weeks for the next few months and everything else. It's so important. And I'm prepared to invest in me because I know that it works. And I want every single person out there to understand that invest in themselves. Find a Dave. If you want to talk to Dave directly, contact me and we'll put you in touch. But if you want to get in touch and you want to talk and you want to get something moving, then work on it yourself. So look, we need to finish up, Dave, because otherwise you and me will be here all night, right? And by the way, you do need to get some lights, invest in some lights, mate. And I'm only half joking, right?
It's still light outside.
Is it? Okay.
The power generator, I can only, because we're up north, I'm only able to run one electrical appliance at any one time. We only got electricity 3 months ago up north. So.
Oh, it's grim up north. Anyway, I'm only joking. So let's look at the remix opportunities quickly, because these are very simple things that people can do. Like you said earlier about the things you can give up food-wise, etc., etc. Breathe deep, because oxygen is more important than water and food, right? I mean, you've got to have oxygen in your body in a big way, right? Yeah. Drink plenty of water and eat nutritious food. And my caveat to that is find out the nutrition that's best for you, right? And find out through various different tests on your body. I looked into a bit of intermittent fasting, and that works quite well for me as well. Only eating at certain times of the day. Great food is medicine, no doubt, right?
Yep.
Absolutely, no doubt. Any pain, physical or mental, has a message for you. You must listen.
Yep, 100%. It's the dashboard.
Yes, I love the dashboard analogy. I'm going to use that myself. I love it. And once you start... Hey, the Hompes method, eh? Right. Once you start on the journey, though, you can't stop, can you? Because then when you get going, it's like, you just want to keep learning. You can't.
I'm part of all my new writing and things in the new project that we're putting together. And you're okay to nick this if you want, but I'm going to be using it in a big way in mine. It's just the snowball effect.
Okay. Yeah.
You've got to get the snowball rolling down the hill, and in order to get that, you need somebody else to help you. The snowball needs somebody to roll it in the first place, and then start to roll it down. But as the size and the momentum gain, it takes on a life of its own, and that's the same in all the different areas of life that we're all trying to improve: family life, relationships, health, finances, career, etc., spiritual. Once you get going, the snowball effect kicks in, and it's just that initial inertia, and it's weird. I was thinking about another analogy earlier. I don't know if this is relevant. I don't want to waffle too much, but it's like people's reliance on the NHS is almost the same as people's reliance on the bank. People rely on the NHS for their health in the same way that people rely on banks for their money. And, you know, I'm sure as part of your life remixed coaching, you know, financial freedom is a huge element in that. And, you know, why would you trust, the reason people trust the banks with their money is that to go out and start dabbling in investments and things like that carries a little bit of risk. But the rewards are so much better when you get empowered and understand how you don't even have to be that empowered. The simple things like just put some money in the FTSE and the S&P 500. And over the next 30 years, it's just going to grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. Touch wood. That's so simple. You don't even have to spend any time doing it. You can set an account up with whoever you want, Vanguard or whatever, and it's there and it's off. Bit of crypto, but the fear is there because there's a risk. And I think it's the same with the health. We're so entrenched in the medical system. When we go outside that box, who do we trust? There's a bit of risk there. I might spend some money here and it might not work. Well, that's part of the journey. In our industry, you know, I've had clients over the years where I've charged them and I've not really got great results with them, but I've always tried my hardest. That number of people becomes less and less with the more skills and experience you get. But there are some people out there in our industry who are pretty shit at what they do. Just like, you know, they just go and they'll diagnose you on the spot. You've got adrenal fatigue. You need to take these herbs and that'll be £200, please. And that's it. So, it is all about finding the right people. You just got to find the right people who have a huge desire to help.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree.
Get the snowball effect, and you won't need them anymore. You just won't need them anymore. They're there if you need them. You don't need them once you get that initial series of steps in place. You're completely automatic by then.
And that's why I do 12 months life remix coaching, and that's why we do 2 years KGW property coaching, because once you get running, then you're off and running and it's all good. So look, the last couple of bullet points, Dave. You cannot have a dis-ease when you're at ease. And I love the disorder because you're right. It's very, very similar, isn't it? Yeah. Find out exactly what works for your body, specifically for you, and then apply the knowledge and your energy will go through the roof as long as you learn it and practice it and make it happen.
Yeah, just personalize it. Get it customized for you as an individual and don't listen to other people chirping about, you know, some dogmatic approach that they have no idea about, you know, in terms of its effects on you.
Yeah, they have no idea about you, right? Then for long-term health, you must learn to remove all stress from your life. You've got to learn to de-stress completely and actually move into a positive place. And the last point is you are whole, perfect, and unique.
Whole is healing. Healing is whole. Health is whole. As we said right at the start, health comes from the word for wholeness. So you couldn't end it on a better note, really.
Thank you. And so on that note, you are, as I said, you are a scientist. You are also healthy. You are also healthy, Dave, which I love. I love that. You've also dropped, I've counted them. You've also dropped 6 F-bombs and 2 shits.
That's not bad over 2 hours, nearly 2 hours. Not bad.
I did say I was going to start some sort of swear jar, but that was brilliant, mate. Honestly, and in all seriousness, just as you disappear into the darkness, just as you disappear into the darkness, I just want to say thank you for tonight, Dave. Right, because we've been here for nearly 2 hours, and there's been so much good information. People watching this back, they've got to watch it back. They've got to listen to all of the stuff you're saying. You know, it's worked well for me. Trush, I know you're watching. Meg, I know you're watching. Gav, I know you're watching. So many of you watching. Marcus, etc. Big love to every single one of you watching tonight live. Do watch this back. If you want to talk to me and get in touch with Dave, I can help you with that. This guy is fantastic, and he has got solutions to just about any medical problem. I deal with the purpose, the vision, the goals, the positive thinking, the programming the subconscious, and taking action and getting things done. And part of that is getting yourself a coach in every area of your life. And this guy here is by far the best. So Dave, last of all, I'd say thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Listening to us waffling on.
No, there's no waffle. There's no waffle. Seriously, you know, everything you said tonight has been really powerful. And the fact that you've read my book, Life Remixed, and you've read the chapter and you understand fully my journey, and you can help me continue with this health and add those extra 8, 10, 20 years of my life. Yes, Dave, that's what we're looking for. So I'm gonna love you and leave you, mate. But I can't thank you enough for being here, mate. Thank you so much.
Really enjoyed it.
Stay where you are, mate. Stay where you are, and I'll let everyone else go. So listen, thanks very much, everyone, for watching. Big love from myself and Dave. Take care of yourselves. Stay healthy, stay happy, and stay wealthy as well. I'm going to go off and see what the Chelsea score is. But love you all so much. Thanks for being here. Keep in touch. We'll talk soon.